Hello again, mud wrestlers. Back in the Paleolithic, when I was 20 or so, The Guardian ran an advert which I've been trying to find but I can't, so please try to picture it. We see a brick wall. In front of the brick wall, on the right of the picture, running from right to left, we see a policeman. And on the left of the picture, also running from right to left, we see someone who isn't a policeman. The policeman is white, the non-policeman is black. And the clever part of the advert, of course, was that then you turned over the page to see the full picture, and it turns out that they were both policemen. It was a white policeman in uniform and a black plainclothes policeman, and they are seen to be chasing the real criminal. And that taught me something about my inner prejudice. It was many, many years later when I realised that I'd been fooled. Because if you put a picture of a policeman chasing another person who's not in police uniform, surely to heavens to Betsy, you're going to think that guy was being chased by the policeman, wouldn't you? What if the policeman was black? Which of course he wasn't. What if the pursued suspect was white? Which of course he wasn't. I want to examine the idea of bias because it's quite the thing now, isn't it? We all have these cognitive biases that we've become aware of. Now, the great philosophers of the past, as far as I can see, had nothing to say about this. You could go to Descartes and say, well, he was trying to doubt everything, I suppose. But even he didn't doubt that his philosophy was grounded in a Western European tradition. And at the end of the day, he coincidentally concluded that all the Christian teachings that he'd originally thought could be proved by this method of doubt. Or in the words of Anthony Flew, my once philosophy teacher, the natural light was turned on by the Jesuits. And there was one other philosophical quote which I thought might dig down into this, and I can't remember who said it. Maybe you can help me. It's along the lines of that if you make a choice in this life between blue or green, say, and you think you've made a choice, in fact your choice might be grounded in some previous set of circumstances which would incline you towards that choice. It's something like we can make a choice but we can't determine the sort of person we are that would make one choice or another. So it's quite a recent thing anyway. I'd go so far as to say by the 70s it was established people were questioning their own implicit biases. The old chestnut question about who built the railroads in America, and the supposed correct answer would have been the American president of the day, or possibly the earlier engineers. But an equally valid response from a black student might have been my great-grandfather. Plus there's a long history of questioning the IQ test, for example. Maybe it's implicitly Western biased. And you can find a long list of now recognised psychological mechanisms for tricking yourself or others. Confirmation bias, anchoring bias, attribution bias, availability bias, the halo effect, the Dunning-Kruger effect, etc. They're all there if you want to look them up. I wanted to explore the very notion of bias in this short waffle. And please don't criticise me for focusing on the race issue, because when I was researching this topic in the modern Library of Alexandria, also known as the Internet, I would say 90+% of anybody addressing this topic was looking at it from the idea of race. So, for better or worse, let's use these as examples. And here I'm going to throw my little pebble into the water and say that the person who thought up the original Check Your Bias advert with the white policeman and the black non-policeman was suffering from some kind of bias. One of the biases of that person, who I imagine would have been a white, liberal, young, hopeful in the newspaper industry, and there I've just displayed my bias, because who knows, no evidence for that at all. But anyway, the implicit bias here is that the people who look at that advert will automatically misread it because they're racists, or at least the white readers. Because the other thing that I notice here is that all the racism seems to be one way. Another advert which I've unfortunately not been able to source was supposed to teach Americans about racial awareness. Two women meet in a cafe, a black woman and a white woman, of course, not a Chinese woman and a Jew, a black woman and a white woman, and on the way into the cafe, the white woman was pushed by some lads outside. She was actually physically pushed in the video. It's all a mock-up, but you can see they're having an argument about basketball, and she actually gets jostled as she's walking into the cafe. And then it turns out that one of the kids outside is the son of the black woman that she's meeting in the cafe, and she has to retract and apologise for her terrible comments that she made when she came in, which to my mind have nothing to do with race. It was a bunch of kids being loud and aggressive and jostling a person without even looking at them or saying sorry or acknowledging them in any way. I didn't understand what the angle here. Maybe there's an implicit bias of the hunchback lesbian feminist or whoever made that advert, is that it's okay for kids to, be a little bit out of hand if they're black because that's their culture. I don't know. I've got 2 more examples. Check out this doozy from Australia. Don't you think we're missing a bit of information here? How do I know that that is not the guy's ex-wife and he just doesn't want to talk to her ever again? And that because she sees the other woman displaying solidarity with her, she keep that quiet. That's to my advantage. I'll just stand here with my arms folded and look at you and play the race card. Another thing that this made me think is I wonder how often this happens. I wonder how often a person refuses to let somebody into a lift because they're of a different ethnicity these days. I didn't find it realistic. But of course, that's not what we're supposed to think. I wonder if the constant drip of these awareness courses and the like is possibly having a negative effect. There's a story of Lord Taylor, who was the first black peer in the House of Lords, which he tells of the first day he went to sit in the House of Lords, and he went to the bar, and he was walking through the bar, and one of the crusty old white Victorian peers saw him and ordered a gin and tonic from him. A gin and tonic, please, my man. Of course, Lord Taylor wasn't a waiter. He was a lord. But rather than send out messages on social media, make a recording of it, try to humiliate the person, what he did was he went to the bar, got a gin and tonic, and brought it to the guy who'd ordered a gin and tonic before introducing himself. At which, of course, the chap was totally mortified. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, oh heavens." This is rather like when I was working in a language school in Oxford, and the poor secretary, again, mortified because an Indian guy walked in. We had many students from all over the world. We had Arabs, we had Russians, we got Brazilians, we got Kazakhs, we got everybody in the school. It's a very international flavour. But the only Indians that ever walked in, well, she said she saw the Indian guy, and she said, "Ah, yes, taxi 4. And he explained that he was a student coming in, and she was, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Was she racist? Was that an implicit bias she had? I guess it was. But then, if every Indian person or Pakistani person that comes to the school, let's face it, they normally speak English. We don't get a lot of Indians, Pakistanis wanting to learn English in England. Then the natural reaction is to think, oh, it's the taxi driver. I'm not sure that makes her a horrible person. But maybe this last exercise does make somebody a horrible person. This was put out on Channel 4, and you can see the intention. They're trying to teach children that some of you have got privilege. It's the whites again, even if you're ginger. That we should be aware of it. We should be aware of our unconscious bias. However, I think this has far more negative effects than positive. You can amuse yourself by looking at the expressions on some of the black kids' faces when they find out that the ginger kid, who probably got kicked last week for being ginger, is far more privileged than them.
We are going to be running a race. However, your starting position in this race will be decided by the answers to questions that we are going to be asking you.
Sorry, what?
If English is your parents' first language, take a step forward.
Oh, yeah.
If you have ever been the only person in the room of your race, take a step backwards.
If you've never been asked where you come from,
take a step forward.
If you have never had to be worried about your family being stopped and searched, take...
If your parents have ever warned you about racism, take a step backwards.
If we were about to start a race, is this a fair starting point for us all? No.
And here, for your enjoyment, are some of the comments that accompanied this video when it was put on YouTube. No, I haven't cherry-picked them. I really scrolled down a long way trying to find a positive comment. I'm trying not to be biased. That's what philosophers do, isn't it? We try to clear away the debris and get to the truth, if such a pre-20th century concept is even admitted these days. What was going through the head of the person who set up that experiment on the sports field? Maybe it just goes as far as in-group preference, which has been our survival mode mechanism for many, many millennia. Or maybe, at the end of the day, no matter how far you dig down into your own consciousness, you're always going to be biased towards one side or the other. I'd just like to show you a clip that a company called Now This used to put out on the internet in order to give us a black person's perspective on life in a predominantly white society. I think you know the black person, it's Muhammad Ali, and here he is making a case for his perspective.
And I always ask my mother, I said, Mother, how come is everything white? I said, why is Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes? Why is the Lord's Supper all white men? Mary and even the angels. I said, Mother, when we die, do we go to heaven? She said, naturally we go to heaven. I said, well, what happened to all the black angels when they took the pictures? Anyway, I was always curious. I always wondered why. You know, Tarzan is the king of the jungle in Africa. He was white. And, white man. I saw this white man swinging around Africa with a diaper on, hollering. Oh! Do you all see Tarzan over here? Right. Tarzan? And all the Africans, so he's beating them up and breaking the lion's jaw. And here's Tarzan talking to the animals. And the Africans been there for centuries, and he can't talk to the animals. Only Tarzan can talk to the animals. And the president lived in the White House. And Mary had a little lamb. His feet as white as snow and Snow White. And everything was white. Santa Claus was white. And everything bad was black. The little ugly duckling was the black duck. And the black cat was the bad luck. And if I threaten you, I'm going to blackmail you. I said, Mama, why don't they call it white male? They lie too.
Very well put, Mr. Ali, and I can't find anything to disagree with in any of that. Also, it was humorous and it was articulate. But why on earth would I say that there's a case of bias here? I'm not complaining about Muhammad Ali, I'm complaining about Now This. Because I happen to know, I'm even old enough to have seen it when it went out live on TV, what Muhammad Ali went on to say later, which he also delivers with his amiable, humorous, raconteurish charm. But my accusation of bias would be simply to ask why this company put out the first part of this interview without putting out this part.
No, not society. God made us different.
No, we're just human beings. He made all of us.
We all, listen, bluebirds fly with bluebirds, red birds want to be with red birds. Listen, tell me when I'm wrong. Pigeons want to be with pigeons.
But
tell
we
me
have
when I'm wrong.
intelligence.
We should have, they don't have intelligence, but yet they stay together. We should have more intelligence than them, right? They all are birds, but they got different cultures. The eagles like to hang out in the mountains. The buzzard like to fly around the desert.
Well,
the bluebird like to fly around the trees and the grass. White people are cultures different from black people. Puerto Ricans and Indonesians cannot integrate. Egyptians and Germans cannot integrate. Australians and Mexicans cannot integrate. They have different foods, they have different music, different cultures. See, you white and I'm black. If white people have a party tonight and black people have a party, the party will be 100% different. If I go play a jukebox in a white restaurant, anybody black Italian here, you gotta look all over that box for some black music. Hank Snow, Johnny Cash,
Josh White.
All kind of names I ain't never heard of. You know, when that train comes around that mountain. When that train comes. And that truck driving around there. So what I'm saying is, that fits the white culture. You go in our joints, oh, baby, don't leave. Oh, I cried all night. Who's that running out of my back door, honey?